Well, hello, everybody. It's 2023.
Ugh.
And Real Talk, Chuck and Pam. We're going to try something new. We're going to try and disprove that old maxim that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. We're going to try something new with our podcast. We're going to, this year, we're going to start off Zoom in these. We're going to record them so that you can see our lovely faces, and we're going to have a guest critic in every week. And we are starting off with one of my favorite guys, Jeffrey York. He is a very good writer, and he's also a great artist. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but this is a picture that he drew, a caricature he drew of Anya Taylor-Joy from Emma, one of my favorite films from a couple years ago. Pam got this for me. Jeffrey, tell the folks at home where they can see your art and read your words.
Well, thank you. My film criticism is at a blog called theestablishingshot.org. I'm also on Rotten Tomatoes, and you can read me at the Chicago Indie Critics site as well. And I have also a contributing essayist to pipelineartist.com, which is a magazine for creativity online. I am going to be in there 2 times a month starting this month. And I've done that for 3 years now. And you can find my art at jeffyorkcaricatures.com. So I take commissions. I will draw you, your family, your friends, your boss, your favorite movie star, singer, even your dogs. I've done plenty of pets.
So would you draw me with my favorite movie star?
I would.
That's a great idea.
I've been trying to get you guys to hire me, but I'm going to do it for free, I think, because I love you so, to maybe use me for promotional materials if I do a caricature of you and your lovely co-host together.
Absolutely. No doubt about doing that. Very good. And Jeffrey, half of my home and my husband's office is decorated with your amazing work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, while Jeffrey's art is, top notch, sometimes he gets these movie things, he's a little askew on those, but I'm sure that's going to come up over the course of time. We'll see if that happens during this episode. We're gonna try and cover 3 films. We're gonna take a look at Matilda, The Whale, and The Pale Blue Eye. Is there any of those 3, guest Mr. York, that you would want to start with?
Well, I think we can go in the order you said. Matilda, the musical, I think is a fun place to start. It's one of those movies that for me kind of snuck up like, oh, that was released? Oh, I didn't realize that. And I turned it on and watched it, and it's so charming, but you're not hearing very much about it, it seems, except maybe for TikTok, where everybody seems to be imitating the one dance about the revolting children and sort of doing their own versions of that. But this gives musicals a good name, but I think the way they marketed maybe gives musicals, at least the marketing musicals, a bad name, because I don't think it's getting nearly the buzz and the sort of play it should. But maybe I'm alone in that opinion amongst you 3.
No, I think that you raise a certain point that Pam and I have talked about before, as far as this month is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much.
Right.
The studios wait until the end of the year with so much of their products so that we can remember them for awards times, best of lists. And Matilda did kind of get lost in the shuffle for me as well. I caught up to it maybe a week after it was released. I think Netflix started streaming it on Christmas Day. Pam knows how much I love musicals. This is not.
Isn't it more that you love to hear me sing?
No.
Let's do some
words. Those words never came out of my mouth.
I'll duet with you, Pam.
No, okay. There's a mute button here, right?
Oh, you can cut that new guy off. Cut him off.
Yeah, cut him off. But you know what? I was blown away by this film. I with 15 minutes in, I was completely charmed. And that young girl, my God, her name's Alicia Ward. What a dynamo. What a dynamo. She completely won me over. She broke my heart. She just had me in her corner. What a talent. I cannot wait to see what this girl does next.
The entire thing truly was just so much fun. And I'm so glad, Chuck, that you took a chance on a musical and actually enjoyed it. Everyone is having fun with their over-the-top characters. And you're right, though, Alicia Weir, she just really stands out and knocks everything out of the park. Emma Thompson, of course, she's a joy in everything that she does. But man, is she having a lot of fun with this. I always, I always wanted to play the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz. No comments from either one of you
Yeah,
right now.
okay.
However, yep, I said no comments. However, that's because playing the bad guy is always so much more fun. And Emma Thompson plays Agatha Trunchbull. She is the headmaster or headmistress at this horrible school for children. And she just has a blast with it. And all these through themes. I don't know, Jeffrey, did you read any of Roald Dahl's books when you were younger, or maybe even as an adult? And did you read this one?
I did, yeah. In fact, he's a very dark storyteller. He he knows inherently that children can handle that, because I think, all that myth about like, oh, kids don't want to be frightened, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. No, all that, the Wicked Witch of the West, they love it. I mean, being scared is a primal thing, and I think kids respond when they're just sort of discovering things like movies and primal emotions and all that kind of stuff. So laughter, joy, even terror, I think, are palpable emotions for them to feel and to play upon. And he was smart enough to know how to do that here in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And the great thing about this movie is, despite its exuberance and energy and gusto, it doesn't lose that darkness. Trunchbull is a scary figure. I mean, Emma Thompson's virtually unrecognizable. She's got about, she looks like she's packed with a refrigerator, almost sort of as a,
She's like,
sort of
like
framework.
Mussolini.
Yes. And, it's got some dark humor. The parents, the Wormwoods, aren't good people either. So, but it all works, and it's all fun. And I hope kids as well as parents and adults discover it.
Very good.
Yeah, and I think it's necessary that it be that dark for us to have that emotional catharsis at the end. I mean, you feel so horrible for this girl, and you want her to succeed. And once she finally does, it's just such a wonderful moment. There's a great song here called "When I Grow Up," in which various kids are singing about the things that they will do that they can't do now. And it's just, I was watching this thing, and it was just heartbreaking to me, the innocence, the naivete about it, and how wonderful that is, and how you need to enjoy it while you can, even though you don't realize it, because it's going to be crushed, soon enough.
Man, talk about terrorizing children. Thanks a lot, Chuck.
Hey, it's life. It's life.
Terrorizing me.
But go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things I really love about this musical too is a lot of times you get people or directors who don't have control of the material. So you get sort of a broad performance from one person and a subtler performance from another. Now, grant you, the children here to some degree are more subtle than obviously Trunchbull, who's sort of caricatured. However, the energy of the dancing, the cinematography, the editing, the movement, it all has this same zest. And I mean, I have to give special props to Ellen Kane, who did the choreography. Without getting too fancy schmancy and sort of the Broadway, oh, I've taken ballet for 5 years kind of stuff. She has the kids do what they can do, but they come raring out to go, moving like this, and it's kind of herky jerky and stuff, but it's energetic. It fits. The kids are all doing it well. They're all of one piece. And it just grabs you, and you sort of feel taken away by this, because it's a whole world that they've created, and everybody's on that same page.
And speaking of the same page, one of the aspects that I truly enjoyed, because its creativity was just off the charts, was when Matilda was telling her story, her made up story, fictional, so she thought, to Miss Honey. And I was on the edge of my seat as I was listening to the story, and the story was coming to life on the screen. And then she'd stop. She's like, I don't know what comes next. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm like, oh, I need to know what happens next. So there are two stories within this one, and they did such a beautiful job of melding them together and making it come full circle at the end. I did not read the book, so I don't know if this aspect was in the book or not, but I so enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because so much of this is about storytelling and the importance of storytelling and the importance of reading. Yeah, she talks about how, reading is her refuge. That's where she escapes. And I remember doing that myself as a child. And my fear is that so many kids of, this younger generation haven't discovered that, and will go without that and not understand or be able to discover, just how you take yourself away in a good book. And that was another aspect of this film I really loved. So,
well, and maybe, just maybe, when kids watch this on Netflix, because I think it's going to pick up steam, it did get buried during December, maybe they'll realize Roald Dahl is an author And he's got a lot of other books out there, so maybe they'll pick up another book.
And there's a Willy Wonka prequel coming out this summer with Timothy Chalamet as Willy Wonka. We figure out how he became who he is. I don't think that's based on a Roald Dahl book, but obviously the character.
Good point.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So Emma Thompson was in a huge, massive makeup makeover, which was incredible. So I think we should move on then to The Whale with Brendan Fraser.
What a segue.
Nice
Did you work
segue.
on that?
Really,
Yeah.
really
Hey,
good.
this is why I get the big bucks gang.
The big guy. Yeah.
Freudian
A movie
slip
in
there,
which,
Chuck.
Mr. Fraser is barely recognizable. I have some definite opinions on this, but I'm going to let one of you guys start off on this one.
I want to hear what Jeffrey has to say about this one.
Well, I will tell you this, I'm very mixed on it. While I think that Brendan Fraser is terrific, and I think he uses his voice and his eyes and his facial features to great use here. I think you find that sensitive character, that character who would be inspiring to students as he's doing Zoom classes online, but he's not seen to them because he's embarrassed to show how big he is and has a lot of shame in his life. I found that he and maybe his housekeeper were sort of on it seemed to be in a different movie in some respects than the rest of the sort of cast and sort of the filmmakers, because they were very sensitive, I think, to the sensitivity of this storytelling and the fact that this is a very sad character, tragic figure. And yet I found that the other characters were really sort of contrived and didn't seem very real. I felt they were theatrical conceits, particularly the missionary who comes by. I mean, my God, it's like you have to change that from theater to the screen. It does not work to have those kind of everybody comes in entrance and starts, at 11 and going on, and it just became kind of shrill and fakey. But the other thing I'll say too, and this is funny because I generally like Darren Aronofsky as a filmmaker, but I would almost like to go and see it a second time just to count how many times we cut to the Brendan Fraser character, Charlie, eating, sweating, looking grotesque. I mean, for this movie that is asking us to look past this and see this sensitive soul who's trying to connect with people and ask all these other people who really can't get past his sins and the grotesqueries of him. Boy, the film and the director and the cinematography, they just overemphasize that at every possible moment. I mean, I would not have shown him struggling for a minute to get down the hallway. I can assume that's going to happen. I think they missed opportunities to show him enjoying art, enjoying music, citing poetry, something else that showed who this wonderful character is, rather than always, now he's depressed, so he's shoving pizza in his face. I know that is part of the character, that is part of the story, but there was a lot of emphasis on that. And I thought it was belying the sensitivity that I thought, that Hong Chow and Fraser were bringing to the roles that they were playing versus the other characters who are sort of antagonists. I felt the filmmaker was almost antagonistic to the character of Charlie.
That's an interesting thought. I was grossed out by the eating. Of course, I think anyone eating near me grosses me out anyway. I've got a few issues.
Drinking water.
Oh my God, you're not going to slurp, are you? All right.
No, I'm a very quiet swallower.
But I feel like it wasn't just for our, and I'm going to use air quotes around this, entertainment and understanding of this character, but I think it was more for him. He was disgusted with himself, and the more disgusted he got, the more he sank into that hole, and there was no getting out of that hole for him. So to me, that was the emphasis and the reason for the emphasis. But it's interesting what you said about that. But I 100%, and I have, ever since we saw the movie Vengeance, Chuck, I have a really hard time saying 100%. And if you haven't seen Vengeance, see Vengeance.
Very good movie.
100%. It's going to be good. Anyway, all the other characters, with the exception of Hong Chau's Liz, take it to level 11, like you said, and then they continue on up the entire time. There is no nuance with it whatsoever. The Thomas character, the Mormon that comes in to try and save him, or whatever religion he was, Um, and then the young girl, Sadie Sink, who played Ellie, his daughter, that was a one-note performance too, and that really
Totally.
bothered me because I thought that's where the emotion comes, that relationship, that connection, that anger, the love, the sadness, the loss, the longing. I mean, there was so much that should have and could have been there, and it wasn't because she was just too busy being mad all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
Great
don't want to
points.
be I don't want to be a dead horse, but I agree with both of you completely. That was my take on this as well. And I went back, and this was based on a play by a guy by the name of Samuel Hunter, based on his own experiences at various parts of his life. And this play has won awards and been lauded and praised. And I kept thinking, what am I missing here? Because yeah, it did seem so contrived at times. It didn't smack of the realism that was matched by what I thought Fraser was doing, and it really undercuts him and does him an injustice. It's funny you say that, Jeffrey, about showing him at his worst. I think that's a really fine line. When you're handling material like this, I mean, I think you've got to show it to a certain extent so that we can understand others' reaction to them. But then I also know that there's been some backlash to this film as well, pertaining to that very point you bring up, that it is objectifying, that it is exploiting people like this. I don't know if that's true or not. I guess maybe it's a personal thing, but it's interesting that you brought that up.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's worthy because I think it is sensitive as an area anyhow. It's one thing for Mickey Rourke's wrestler in the movie The Wrestler that Darren Aronofsky did to choose to do the steroids and the drugs and these things that he is choosing for his life. And grant you, Charlie is choosing the food and these things too. But, for example, early in the film, when we're first introduced to him, we see Charlie furiously masturbating to porn on the internet. And it's so volatile. And I thought that's a choice that Aronofsky could have directed to pull back a little bit. We're already going to see this character who's, 355 pounds or whatever he is, and huge and many, many problems, sweating profusely just from wheezing and breathing and all that. And then we have to do that too. It's like, how much indignation do we have to apply to one character? And the funny thing is, in Black Swan, another Aronofsky movie, similar to The Wrestler, is I think that the director looked beyond their flaws and their labels to find the humanity in them, even though they're certainly kind of out there, maybe a little crazy, or physically pushing themselves in the wrong ways that are damaging. But here, I just thought, whenever he gets the gleam in Fraser's eye, or Charlie is talking and he's reading something good, I get it. There's the person, you look beyond that, but they keep coming back to, oh, now he can't get up, now he's doing this. And I felt it. I guess it was an imbalance. I mean, I know you're going to see that, and you're going to see it anyhow from looking at him, but because you can see it just sitting there, I don't know if they had to go out of their way to show that he can't pick up a picture that he dropped. We've all known heavy people. We've all known old people. I think we can assume that without having to spend half a minute belaboring that and sort of giving him even more, sort of insult to injury.
Hearing you talk like this, I want to go back now and watch his other movies.
Oh, there you go. I think they're better movies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I even love Noah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. There you go. That's a rare one that, he kind of got lambasted for that one. But like in The Wrestler, for example, I mean, this is a pathetic character that Randy the Ram Robinson is. And yet, oh my God, the pathos for him, and you're crying. And when he's going to the stripper, it's like, that isn't good. Who feels that? But this guy, he's looking for friendship, for some kind of connection anywhere. And he's not even interested in her, in the Marissa Tomei character, taking her clothes off. He's interested in just connecting with somebody. Yeah. Same with Charlie here. And to your point about Sink, I mean, she's very hard to connect to for us, and we don't see any nuance in her eyes that would seem to make her worthy of Charlie's work and affection to get through to her.
Kind of a disappointment to me. I was really looking forward to it, and especially with all the buzz. I mean, seriously, I love Brendan Fraser, and I was glad to see that he had a new role that everyone was talking about. And then when I came out of it, I was very disappointed. So didn't make my top 10 list.
Well, and I wonder if the quality of the film is going to hurt his chances at winning the Oscar. Obviously, he's going to be nominated. I mean, I think you can take that to the bank, but
right.
I wish if the film had been stronger, I think you could, it'd be a sure thing. But I just wonder how that's going to affect things overall. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Time will
It's,
tell.
it's a good question, because I think a lot of times you want to like the film and sort of award the film as well with it, which maybe that helps Colin Farrell a little bit, because I think the Banshees movie has a little bit more of appeal to people, not just for that performance, but for the other things in the film in general. Oh, Pam.
I
Well,
know.
people with taste
We
and who can
win
appreciate
2-3,
things like
2 to
that.
3.
2-3. Yeah,
Yeah,
the guys are ganging up on the girl. That's the way it always is.
Pam's going to come
Gotcha.
to regret that guest star bit with the 2-3 odds against her.
It's
Well,
all right.
I'm sure the tables are going to turn on all of us at some point.
I'll be waiting.
Yeah. So, another movie that came out on, I believe it was Christmas Day as well, or at the end
Yep.
of the year was no, it came out on Netflix on January 6th and was in theaters the week before, The Pale Blue
That's right.
Eye,
Yeah.
with Christian Bale as a detective in the 1830s who is called to the West Point Academy to investigate a very, very gruesome murder. And wouldn't you know it, one of the cadets there happens to be a young would-be writer by the name of Edgar Allan Poe, who I wouldn't say, well, he takes under his wing, but also wants him to help him find clues as to who committed this murder by interviewing other cadets and ingratiating himself there. And this is directed by Scott Cooper, who Bale has worked with a couple times before, most notably, I think, in Out of the Furnace, a great little domestic drama that I really loved from a few years back. What'd you guys think of this one?
Jeffrey, you want to take it?
Sure. He also did Hostels with him, which was, I think, another one of those underrated movies that unfortunately snuck in, I think, in December a few years back and got a little bit forgotten as well. The timing of these things is really funny. It's like, open it in September when nothing is opening, and then people will see it, talk about it, and get its due. I liked it. I did not love it, but I liked it. It was different and not quite what I expected, but I did enjoy it. I think it's an interesting mystery. I think it's interesting characters. I particularly love the fact that they're doing something with Edgar Allan Poe, and Lee's basing this, even though it's a fictionalized story, on his true history. He did go to West Point. He did not like it there. He was at odds with them and sort of a maverick in ways that clearly the military was not going to exactly embrace. And I found it quite an intriguing story. I will say two things as I watched it, though. One is I thought they could have trimmed about 20, maybe 30 minutes out of it. It just dragged on.
Wow.
It lacked a little bit of clip and pace, but at the same time, the atmosphere, the moodiness, certainly the production design was rather exquisite for it. The other thing, too, and I was thinking of you when I was watching this, Chuck, because I know that you didn't like the Batman because you got ahead of the story. I figured out the story in the first half hour, and I was waiting a long time.
Really? Oh, wow.
Wow, that's
Well,
impressive.
and I'm not saying I'm like, Columbo or any kind of Ellery Queen, as it were, but that's okay, because I always tell people if they get ahead of the movie and they figure it out early, then the fun of the movie comes just like watching Columbo, seeing how it's found out, like seeing what the filmmakers do to help thread the needle for you, or how other characters around there do. Do you want me to share it, or I don't want to spoil it because the listeners may not have watched this yet, but if you want, I can tell you.
Hold a couple cards
Okay.
close
All
to
right,
your
I
vest
will.
there.
I will. I'll tell you in private.
Okay. All right.
I'm on the same page with both of you. Shocking. No, I thought it was too long as well. I really enjoyed it, with the exception of it being a little bit too long. And I did not get ahead of it. I did not see that second twist coming. I thought the movie was ending when it should have ended, about a half an hour before the actual end.
Yes.
And I think the screen even went black for a sec. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then we come back.
Yeah.
And we get more information, and that's when the real mystery is revealed as to what happened. And I thought that was poetic and gorgeously done with the trauma and the tragedy that was actually occurring. And it explained to me, Christian Bale's character of Augustus Landor really explained his demeanor and his entire approach to life. And I did go back and I watched the first half hour, 45 minutes again, just to kind of solidify those thoughts and those feelings. And I love Christian Bale. I think he can do almost no wrong. And in this movie, he gave me what I needed in a character like this. He wasn't Sherlock Holmes. He was a little condescending and pompous, like you would expect a Sherlock Holmes kind of character to be, but he had so much more humanity, and just beautiful, beautiful chemistry with Harry Melling, who plays Edgar Allan Poe. Um, Together, the two of them in that father-son type of relationship that breaks apart for different reasons. And again, another tragic moment in a relationship. This entire film is about, to me, relationships and loss. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, with the exception of, I agree, another 20-30 minutes cut down. We slog a little bit in the middle.
I didn't have a problem with the length.
No?
I thought it was fine, but I really loved the ending. Really loved the ending. And then I had to think back, okay, do all the pieces actually fit? Did it
Mhm.
really? And it does. I used to teach Poe, and I just loved the references throughout.
Yeah.
And they're not really overt, but they're there. He creates the mystery story, the detective story. So obviously, the implications that this would maybe be the impetus. His detective that he creates is C. August Dupin, and of course, Bale's name is Augustus. All these tragic
Right.
heroines that are in his poems and stories are based on the. It could be based on the character played by Lucy Boynton. So I loved all these little Poe allusions that
Poisms.
they had throughout.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And boy, atmospheric, really atmospheric. This has been going around for like 40, 50 years, but Sylvester Stallone claims to
Oh,
have a script. No, Jeffrey? No,
I don't think he's the right guy for that
not,
material, but I'll tell you
no,
why in a second. Go ahead, continue.
no, but with this kid in a biopic,
Mhm.
maybe based on Stallone's
Mhm.
script. I mean, this guy could play Poe the rest of his life. I thought he was great.
Oh, he's a dead ringer for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think he captures the both the romanticism and the tragedy.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit too soon. I'm a Poe aficionado as well, Chuck. In fact, he's my favorite writer. I don't know if he was quite that tragic at that early age, but we'll give him a little bit of license because it is a fictionalized version of this. But I agree with you. I think that he was very good, and he's the most interesting character in it because you can't get real handle on him right away, and you wonder why the hell is he at West Point when he seems to be such an upstart. And we find out all those reasons why. The one thing that I think is interesting too, Chuck, that you've brought up, and I love the fact that you're a Poe teacher as well, as I'm always shocked how little of Poe has made it onto the screen. And I'm not sure about Stallone's version of it. I've heard some good things about it, but then I've also heard him say, like, he worked out a lot. He was actually in very good shape. No, he wasn't. He was he worried the weight off. That's what his story was. I mean, but I mean, it's a fascinating life that we've not really seen put on screen very much. And usually, if it is, it's like this one or the movie The Raven with John
Ugh,
Cusack, where they're fictionalized versions of them, where they're
right.
asking Poe to do things that he didn't do.
Right.
When all the things that he did do, he was an editor, he was a puzzle maker, he was almost like the Riddler and stuff. I mean, he was
Mhm.
constantly creating puzzles for, and that's where he made his money from, for newspapers and editing other books. He got into fights with famous poets. He presented his poetry. In fact, the way he made money off of the Raven poem was not through its reproduction. There were no reproduction rights on stories then. He made it from reading it
Reading. Yeah.
in theaters to people and stuff like that. So there's so much of his life that has not been exploited or for that matter, even told at all. And this was a nice reminder of like, he had a fascinating even childhood.
Do you
So
think you think
let's come
maybe
back
his
to
life,
him.
you think maybe his life's just too tragic
It
that
is.
no one wants to cover it, maybe?
I think that's exactly why. And I think that everybody goes, oh, he's a downer and he died mysteriously and he's a drunk and all these things. But at the same time, he always was trying to save his wife from dying from tuberculosis. He did not, which is ironic because his greatest success when he finally had money to get her doctors was that period of his life when he wrote The Telltale Heart, The Bit and the Pendulum, which were basically putting him in the role of his main character in these stories as sort of the victim of circumstance, and sort of these humongous odds against him, like this disease was against his family. But he wasn't able to save her because people died from consumption back in those days, as they called it. So there's a lot of, I think, of interesting stuff to his life, but it is a sad story. But I also think that sad story should be told as well. And for studios that don't want to tell because it's a sad story, they're missing out on the real history of one of the greatest writers.
You know, Jeffrey, I know that you do a lot of screenwriting. Have you thought about writing something about him?
You know, I don't know something. I can't believe you asked that. Actually, I am writing a screenplay about Edgar Allan Poe. I wasn't going to say it because I thought it sounds so self-serving, but
It is.
But it's about,
I love it.
It's actually about that very time period when he
Oh.
was finally reaching some success as a writer, because so much of his life was struggling to that. And he was making money as an editor and, you know, sort of the toast of the town. And yet his wife was dying and it was all trying to help her. And yet it wasn't enough. So I think it's kind of a tragic love story. And I'll just tell you, I think the ending of that movie, if I give it away to you, somebody I hope doesn't steal it and write it before I do, but I think I've already copyrighted it. So anyway, it ends with him reading you know, Annabelle Lee, which he wrote after his wife died. And that's about her. It's not about the girl here in this one,
Right.
although I may think so. Maybe Lenore is influenced by Leah here, but Annabelle Lee is about his wife. And that became a successful poem too, that he made money reading as well. So I think to have him sort of read that as a tribute to her, even though he couldn't save her, but she lives on through his work and he lives on with her through his work, would be kind of a slightly bittersweet, upbeat ending.
You know, I think once you get your script, I think once you get your script done, you need to get it to Darren Aronofsky to go with his self-destructive characters that he
See,
seems to
there you go. Well, and he's
really
already
concentrate on.
he's already got Melanie who could play the role.
You know, you're halfway done with this project. You know,
It sounds like it.
so do you subscribe at all to the notion that he was a carrier of tuberculosis?
You know, I don't know. That's a good question. It's a really good question.
Because
I
I've
don't know
read
what-
that theory because, you
Right.
know, his adopted mother,
Right.
his own mother, a woman that he also fell in love with. And of
Right.
course, they all died of tuberculosis, but he never got it. And there's this notion or theory that perhaps he was in fact a carrier.
Right. It's hard to say. I mean, so many people died of consumption then for all kinds of reasons. And I mean, I think it could be possible with him. Of course, you know, the relationship he had with his wife, I think was always more sort of like the one they portray here in The Pale Blue Eye, where it's a little bit more affection and worshipful rather
Right.
than necessarily being traditional male-female. So
Right.
there's always questions too about whether he actually even had a sexual relationship with his
Right.
wife. And that he may have been a closeted homosexual. Whether or not that's true doesn't matter. But I think his relationships with many people, including his own wife, were very different and unique, as is kind of this sort of Holmes-Watson version that they've got going here, which is more like father-son.
Right. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us to talk about 3 films. And we really enjoy your input, your insight, and your intuition with everything. Remind our listeners again where they can read and where they can purchase some wonderful caricature artwork and anything else you want to share.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I can be read. My reviews are up at theestablishingshot.org. That's my movie blog. I also occasionally do television reviews there. In fact, I want to write about Slow Horses. If you haven't seen that, that's my recommendation. Another thing that sort of fell through the cracks in December.
Yeah.
I also can be read on Rotten Tomatoes, and you can find my caricature work at jeffyourcaricatures.com. Again, available for all kinds of commissions. So let me know.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. Chuck,
Thank
good to
you.
see you.
You too. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a delight. I love following you guys. I love your show, and I'm honored to be a guest, let alone the first one. Take that, the rest of you members of the CIC.
And as a parting gift, you see this little Real Talk with Chuck and Pam mug. You will be getting your own vessel for liquids of your choice
I love
with
that.
Real Talk with Chuck and Pam. So I will send that your way.
And next year, Pam, you're going to turn the mug around, and there's going to be a caricature of you and Chuck.
Ooh, I like that idea. Ooh, I really
Yes.
do like that idea.
There you go. All for you. All for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, everybody,
Thank
for
you.
listening to Real Talk with Chuck and Pam.